Hey, Michael and Kris here with Create Insights, and I'm super excited to do kind of the follow-up part two video of our original video, which was basically talking about the systems and processes of what you do with a lot of projects going on and ingesting all the footage from these different projects, and if you're having out-of-town shooters work on a project, how you're getting it, how you're dealing with it, and all that jazz. And but then part two is going to be more about what you do when you get all that footage. If you've got multiple editors, virtual editors, if you've got your in-house editor, just how you deal with that and what the expectation is from the client, what deadlines are, and yeah. So that's it, Kris. So I'm gonna have you as the expert more on this.
All right. So, just kind of first and foremost, I'll say that I run my business very much with an on-demand business model. I read the book about Michael Dell. It's kind of one of the first sort of biographies, I guess, about Michael Dell. And it really laid out how, with Dell, it's this on-demand production that keeps inventory costs low, overhead low, and they're basically, they don't spring into action. They don't start spending money until the customer spends money, basically. And so I kind of look at that when the economy was kind of killing our old business model, and I said, how can I kind of reinvent how things work? And the idea was, on demand. I mean, just, don't really do anything until the customer pays you or until, there's a need to do something. And so, I don't keep a lot of people on staff. I mean, we generate enough work in this company that, it took 7 employees to do in my old business model. It's amazing how just me and my full-time guy and a handful of freelancers are killing that old business model, and profits are crazy compared to what they used to be. So the main thing is, so talking about systems, I mean, we should do the shoot, it comes back, and let's say on one end of the spectrum where we're not very busy and, we only have 1 or 2 projects and we've got a pretty loose deadline, and then on the other end of the spectrum, we're completely slammed, deadlines are crazy, and so we'll kind of hit both ends of the spectrum.
That's great.
So the first end of the spectrum is if we only have a couple projects and fairly relaxed deadlines, I try really hard not to do anything with the footage or with the editing process. I mean, I try to just say, hey, Johnny, who's my editor, you've got a script, you've got the clips, I may take, 20 minutes or so, just really kind of going through real quick, scanning the footage just to kind of throw them in different folders. Just so, because if the editor wasn't on the shoot, it takes them half a day just to realize what the heck they're even looking at. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So if you can do a little bit as a producer to organize the content for the editor, that at least is going to help them, have a better feel. Plus, whenever you look at the first cut of the edit and you go, man, I'm not real crazy about that shot, you'll remember that there's another shot because you were looking at it. Now, if you shot the material, obviously you'd know there's another shot. But if you didn't shoot it and you're just the producer or director, then you kind of want to take a little bit of that time to look through it. So if it's a loose project, I pretty much, or the deadline is loose, I'll let him do most of the work in terms of taking it from A to Z, from start to finish with the video. And then just as he has questions, he'll ask me and I'll come in, take a look, or he'll call me or text me, or we'll kind of work on it that way. When we get super busy, I almost kind of consider myself, yeah, I'm the owner of the company, I'm the producer director, but I'm really the support guy. I mean, I'm like, where in the company needs support, and when we're really busy, basically my editor needs a lot of my support.
Yeah.
And so what I look at in those circumstances is, okay, what are the things I can do in the project that I do well and that I can do really fast? And what are the things he does well and he does really fast? Well, he's really good at the really high-end animated After Effects graphic stuff. So when we're really busy, I immediately break down the script. It says, okay, and everything on my script is color-coded, by the way. When I write a script, if it's graphics, it's highlighted in blue. If it's content we need but don't have, it's highlighted in red. If it's music, it's green. If it's footage that we have that exists, it's black. And so right when you look at that, he can go through as the graphics guy and know everything that's in blue he's got to create a graphic for.
Gotcha.
And if he's editing everything that's in red, we don't have. And so he says, hey, what about scene 37? We don't have this particular photo. And then I'll say, all right, I'll send the client a note real quick. So when you look at that, then basically, if I want to plug in, then I can sit down and I can say, okay, Johnny, you just take care of all the graphic work and I'll rough cut everything else. And it might be that I don't do the complete rough cut, but maybe I've got 2 or 3 hours this morning that I can just, just get him ahead by 2 or 3 hours to try to keep, him ahead of time. Now, even when you have, 10 or 12 projects going at the same time, you still have to develop like short-term milestones for each project. Like for instance, the project might be a $10,000 video. We've already shot it. The budget calls for 3 or 4 days of editing, right? So basically, I'll schedule those 3 or 4 days and lock that in to just that project to basically say, you know what, let's just all hands on deck. Let's nail it and get it out the door. So, and then let the client decide when they want to get back to us with feedback, because we're moving to the next project. Mm-hmm. We're not waiting for feedback. We're not waiting for any of that. And then what often ends up happening is I overlap projects by a couple days. So even though this is a 4-day edit and the next project is a 2-day edit, I'm going to say over this 4 days, I want us to finish this 2-day edit too. And what that does is that helps us kind of just work more efficiently. And basically, if he's putting together this complex animation, and let's say that it's got an 1.5 hour render. Well, what's he do? He flips over to the other iMac and starts going through the second script, the second project, and working through that. It's not we don't do it where you set it up, render, and then just sit back and watch the paint dry for 2 hours. I mean, you constantly are moving because we like to go home at 5 o'clock.
Yep.
And the only way to go home at 5 o'clock is if you're doing that kind of thing.
Yep.
And so I feel like I'm all over the place here. But
I think so. I want to press on. You've got that. That sounds very much in-house. So I think we've got a good feel for that. We could probably follow up some things. But what about, what calls you to do something that's not in-house between you or your main editor? What's going to bring up a situation that you go, I've got to use somebody down the street. He's not going to come into my office. He's not going to do anything. How am I getting him that footage? How's that process going? And you obviously don't have the control to have him bouncing around on 2 computers and all that kind of stuff. So there's that aspect of how are you making sure that it's getting done within budget, the guy's not screwing around. I mean, just, these are things that come up. There's things, honestly, we're dealing with a little bit. So,
yeah, I mean, what I can speak on is I can say that, honestly, since I hired Johnny full-time a year ago, I haven't had to go out of house.
Okay.
Which really says a lot for, how much of a rock star he is. And the fact that I plug in where I need to, and I've got a good balance of, I kind of have this just indicator in my head that says, you know what, I need to really plug in and get busy in order for us to stay ahead of the curve. Like last night, I mean, we shot in Nashville all day. We got back at 3 o'clock, and I just kind of had this feeling. I was like, I really need to get this project moving for Johnny, so when he comes in tomorrow, the rough cut will already be laid down. So I stayed till 9:30 last night. Which, just because this is one of those weeks where we got too much to do and not enough time to do it. And it's just like, I needed to get that done. Yeah. So, okay, back up though, a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Before I had a full-time guy, I relied strictly on freelance animators, editors, the whole thing. What I learned is, number one, if you want to be successful with an outsourced anything as it relates to production, you have to overproduce the crap out of it. I mean, you have to be so thorough in your notes. You have to, everything that you're thinking in your mind creatively needs to be in the script. And that might make a 1.5-minute script 10 pages long, because you just have to brain dump as the producer, as the creative, as the ideas. You just have to do that. And then you have to send that script to that person, and you have to get them on the phone or through Skype. And you have to go line by line through those scenes to make sure they understand what you need and what you want. And you make them explain it to you, so that you're not just, have diarrhea of the mouth and then thinking that they're getting it all. I mean, you have to say, okay, in scene 1, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? What would your plan be to execute that? And it's not an interview. It's just you're just trying to get the good dialogue. And so once they tell you what their plan, it's like, you know, they got a good feel for what they're going to do. Now, I used to try to hire like one guy to do it all. It's a mistake. It's a big mistake. And the reason is that, you know, I think you only have so much creative energy. You know, you've got one tank, one 5-gallon tank of creative energy. And if you use 90% of it with the edit, you know, the rough cut, getting things together and all that, by the time it comes around to doing graphics, you've only got like 10% left, man. And I mean, you're going to rush through it. The keyframe's going to be out of place, and it's just not going to look good. And vice versa. If you have a guy that spends 90% on the graphics, the edit's going to suffer. And so what I learned is to segment the two. Like, hire a guy that's just responsible for doing the edit before any of the graphics come into play, and then have the graphics guy doing his kick, you know, 100% of his creative tank is on graphics and the other guys is on the edit, and they're working simultaneously at the same time from the same script. This guy's doing all the graphics because it's all in blue, you know, and this guy's doing everything else. And then basically the graphics guy's sending me files to approve, the editor's sending me files to approve, and then as soon as I'm approving everything, the graphics guy sends the graphics to the editor via FTP if they're small enough, or via hard drive. Usually it'd be the same exact hard drive, because that's the other thing I should mention. When I was working in that kind of process with multiple people, we would do the shoot, or the footage would come here. I would create duplicate drives for both parties. That way when I send them out, all the files are the same. File structure's the same, everything's the same. So when this guy does graphics, he puts them in the graphics folder, right? They both have the same Final Cut project, the same After Effects master, the same everything. So when he does the graphics, he usually would just ship the drive to the editor, right? So that he has everything. And then he would ship that main drive basically back to me once the project was done for archival purposes. But from approvals, they're just sending like H.264s. That's what I'm sending to the client to get approval. And then once everybody's happy, I usually would have that editor send me whatever the final outputs were for delivery. You know, are we doing a Blu-ray, are we doing a DVD or whatever? And then basically they would ship the drive back to me. And so you know how projects kind of linger sometimes? Yeah. So instead of it being in the editor's hands for weeks and weeks and weeks, I wanted to hurry up and get the stuff back here because it's not safe until I have it, you know? And so if a client says, well, we love it, but we want to change this title to this, and we want to supplement that shot for that, that's stuff I can do in 5 minutes. And there's no reason to like call the editor, pay him more money, do all this, you know? And so what's cool, and even in circumstances where, you know, they made a quick change in Final Cut, since we all have the same files, all he would have to do is email me the Final Cut file. And so I just open that, reconnect everything, or it's already connected because it's the same file structure, re-render everything, and I've got a full updated thing without having to ship hard drives around. Now it's complicated, it sounds complicated, but it's really not once you sit down and really think it all through.
Yeah, so, and we'll finish this one off here in just a second. So you said optimally the two, but right now you have the one doing the all?
Yeah, I mean it's.
But you feel because he's right, like out of the two, you've said killing your old model, the model you have now. Did you definitely recommend overall that all that in-house is so much more efficient, so much more beneficial, ultimately?
I think it's a lot like what we recommend when people ask us what all equipment should they buy as it relates to their core package. You know, you have to look at what's your core post-production need. You know, we have enough projects going at any point in time that I can justify the cost of a full-time editor. Right. Could I justify the cost of a second one? Probably not. Yeah. A third? Definitely not. Yeah. So where we kind of go from here, the thing is, the fact that he's doing both edit and graphics, I'm, you know, a room away to be able to look at something real quick, give him my feedback, and then move on to other things, you know? And whereas it's more difficult to do that with freelancers that are especially across the country or across, you know, wherever. So that's the one thing that if like for you guys, if you knew and felt very confident, you know what, we've got enough work to keep one full-time guy busy, then you just find the best guy you can get, or bring whoever you use now on full time,
Yeah.
and just hey, this is what we're going to do. Maybe I personally like them working where I'm sitting, just because I like to be able to have that interaction. I feel like it saves a bunch of time, but it can still work very well even in a virtual environment.
Well, I think, and this is what I'll kind of end on for everybody out there. We're moving, we're making money, things are good, the projects look good on the outside. What we're noticing is the overflow of stuff that's happening. Some of our not so strong points are we're freaking putting our finger right in that wound and it's hurting. Whereas, like, if you're not putting the finger, it's there, it hurts, but it doesn't hurt as much as when you poke on it. And so it's a weird analogy, but that's what's happening. There was things there that hurt a little bit, never really affected us too much, but now it's getting poked really hard, and we're going, okay, what's going on? And one of the big things is, I personally, before I had Ryan, I'm a much more lenient person, and I would get things done, but I'm very fast too. But the people that I had involved were kind of allowed this kind of like, get things done, and as long as it's done, we'll be happy. It doesn't matter when you do it. Well, that's coming to kind of bite us in the ass a little bit, but also because I've got Ryan, who doesn't really think that way. It is the 9 to 5 for him, and when there's people that he's got working with him that want to work at 9 o'clock at night, that's not jiving. And so I think what our struggle is do we A, put the strict timelines even if they're not going to be there, or B, say, listen, here's the deal, you've got to come here or we're not going to be able to work with you, and then you're going to have these strict times. So throw
I
that at
think
you.
what's important, no matter what the circumstance is, you have to make other people work the way that you need them to work. I mean, you have to look at, what if somebody says, the person that has the power is the one that writes the check,
Yep.
not the one that gets the check.
Yep.
And, when our clients tell us to jump, what do we say? How high? What do you want us to do? Where do we need to go? How can we help you? How can we make your life easier? Our vendors need to do the same thing for us, because we're one level up in the food chain, and so that's the thing. I actually have occasionally, it's been a while since I've had to do this, but we've had situations where I'll bring in an editing assistant. Say, listen, man, I just got a ton of, we just went on a 4-day trip, and I didn't have a chance to transcode everything and back it all up, because if we shot, then we had to drive 6 hours and shoot again and drive another 6 hours. And so, I would tell them, come here and use one of my other workstations and do the work, as opposed to, me trying to send all that crap to them and then them make sense of it. Because again, I'm within an arm's reach to answer a quick question and do all that. So, and in terms of the vendors that want to work late at night, I kind of fell into that trap too. You get the call I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and 11:30 I get the text that says, hey, are you up? I've got a question. And it's like, I want the work done, and I'd like it to be done by the next day. And I'm a little frustrated that he didn't do it sooner than that. But what are you going to do? Just not answer the question and then go back to sleep? And then when you wake up, it's not done, or it's done wrong,
Yep.
and then you lose a whole nother day. And so that, I kind of tried to nip that in the bud by just saying, hey, listen, I didn't say 5 o'clock. I would say it's 7 o'clock, I'm done. I'll answer any question you have up to 7 o'clock. But beyond that, don't bother me, because it's my family's time, it's my time with my wife, and it's my time to just not deal with work.
Yep.
And once you set that expectation, it starts to work. But you know what? If people can't work under those conditions, you got to find somebody that can.
Absolutely. All right, well, Kris, I appreciate that. That was a great talk there. I've got already follow-up videos, guys, that we'll have here. I think this is Kris drill session here today on our recordings. Yeah, createinsights.com. We've got a great resource there, and a great membership where essentially it's called the Create Insider, and we do a weekly coaching call every Wednesday at 2 p.m. And it's awesome. You can just drill us, but you've also got a great community of people who also have a lot of strengths and weaknesses, and we all work together as one to get everybody's questions answered and really help everybody out. So we appreciate you guys, and we hope you enjoy the information, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Kris. Appreciate it, buddy.
Have a good day.
All right, rock on.